The sky didn't begin or end, it simply hovered there like a soft breath held between dreams. Somewhere within that breath, a meadow floated, weightless, endless, aglow with quiet stars that brushed the tips of its waving grasses. The meadow had no soil beneath it, only soft mist that curled like sleepy thoughts. It was a place that did not belong to day or night but instead to that hush that lives between moments, where time forgets how to count. In the middle of the meadow was a traveler, though they didn't remember arriving. Their footsteps made no sound as they wandered through fields of flowers that shimmered like constellations, petals wide and pulsing with faint glows. Some blooms flickered like candlelight, while others turned their faces to the stars overhead as if listening. Above, the sky rippled gently as though made of silk. Stars hung at strange angles, not fixed in place but slowly drifting like paper lanterns on a slow-moving current. Some of them blinked sleepily, dimming and brightening, their rhythms soft and irregular like the breathing of someone deeply at rest. The traveler paused beside a pale blue flower the size of a teacup saucer. It hummed gently, a sound not heard but felt, like warmth spreading through one's chest. When the traveler bent closer, the flower opened wider, and a single note of music escaped, long, low, and kind. The air smelled of lavender and distant rain. Not the rain itself, but the memory of it, the way it lingers in old wood and the folds of fabric left out on the line. In the distance, a hill began to rise, although it hadn't been there moments before. It swelled gently, like a sleeping creature breathing beneath a blanket of stars. The traveler walked toward it, not because they needed to, but because the hill seemed to be waiting. The grass underfoot whispered encouragement, each blade brushing softly against their ankles like pages turning in a dream. As they reached the hill's crest, the meadow spread out below them like a sea of light, endless and slow. Far away, a tree shimmered, its trunk a ribbon of silver that twisted upward into branches full of bells. The bells didn't ring in sound but in feeling. Tiny sparks of warmth and calm that drifted across the chest like lullabies without language. A gentle wind stirred, though there was nothing here to push or pull it, and it carried with it motes of starlight that fluttered like fireflies. The travelers stretched out their hand, and a cluster of the glowing specks gathered near their fingers, swirling like they recognized the shape of a dreamer. One of the specks floated closer, and as it touched the traveler's palm, an image unfolded in the air above, a memory they hadn't yet made. A soft bench beneath a willow tree with roots that dangled into clouds, a cup of something warm held gently in both hands, and laughter like a river's ripple beside them. Then the image dissolved, leaving only the warmth behind, and the specks drifted on. The traveler continued on, though there was no path, only the gentle invitation of the meadow itself. Each step felt lighter than the last, as if the meadow were remembering them with each movement, tucking their presence into its soft corners. Somewhere nearby, a brook began to babble, its voice as faint as wind through silk. The traveler turned toward it and found not water, but a stream of stars trickling over smooth stones that glowed like polished moonlight. The stream curved through the meadow, vanishing behind hills that breathed and trees that hummed. A small bridge arched over it, carved from something that looked like ivory and dreams. When the traveler stepped onto the bridge, they felt the stream's gentle pull below their feet, as if time itself had decided to nap and left only its sighs behind. They leaned against the railing and watched the stars drift by beneath them, catching glimpses of scenes in their light. A lantern-lit path through a forest of feathers, a cat curled inside a floating teacup, a gentle snowfall that rose instead of fell. Each vision came and went without urgency, like thoughts just before sleep. The traveler lingered, then crossed to the other side, where the grass was slightly taller and the air smelled like honey and something older than language. A figure stood nearby, robed in clouds, face hidden beneath a hood of soft light. They raised a hand in greeting, not speaking but offering something small, a seed that shimmered like a pearl wrapped in starlight. The traveler took it gently. The figure nodded once, then stepped backward into the air and vanished, dissolving into a flock of birds made of shadow and glow. The traveler held the seed to their heart, and it pulsed once, sending a wave of peace through their body like a lullaby sung by the sky itself. With the seed cradled in their hands, they continued through the meadow that floated between stars, each step a heartbeat, each breath a cloud. A soft path began to form ahead, not from stone or dirt, but from memory and intention. As the traveler stepped forward, the meadow gently arranged itself beneath them, laying down a trail of petals and silver-threaded moss. The stars above shifted slowly, their movement imperceptible unless one watched for a very long time. One star drifted lower than the others, and as it descended, it softened, becoming round and warm like a lantern. It touched down in the grass beside the traveler and pulsed softly, revealing itself to be a creature made entirely of glow. It had no face, no voice, but it radiated kindness in waves. The traveler knelt beside it and the creature leaned forward, nudging their hand with what might have been its nose. As they touched, the meadow brightened slightly, as though approving of their meeting. The creature turned and began to float slowly ahead, leading the traveler toward a thicket of trees that shimmered with translucent leaves. The trees sang as the wind moved through them, their branches ringing with soft, bell-like tones. The sound was not music in the usual sense, it was memory and wonder and rest, all blending together in a harmony too old to name. As they stepped beneath the canopy, shadows curled gently around their feet like curious cats. The air here was cooler, but not cold, more like the chill of a bedsheet turned over to the fresh side. The leaves above caught fragments of light and memory, projecting them gently onto the ground, a child laughing in slow motion, a kite drifting upward into a sky filled with feathers, the echo of a name that had never been spoken aloud. The glowing creature paused beneath one of the trees and rose into its branches, settling among the light as though it had always belonged there. The traveler stood quietly, their breath steady and deep. In the silence, they began to feel the hum of the forest seep into them, a peaceful rhythm that matched their own heartbeat. From deeper within the grove came the sound of soft footsteps, not hurried, not urgent, just present. An old woman emerged, wrapped in layers of woven mist, her eyes bright with stars. She carried a lantern in one hand and a bundle of dried flowers in the other. She did not speak, but her gaze welcomed the traveler, seeing everything they were without needing to ask. She beckoned them closer and handed over a single dried bloom from her bundle. It crumbled slightly in the traveler's palm, and with it came the scent of autumn wind, candlelight, and slow afternoons. The old woman smiled, her wrinkles deep and soft like folds in moonlight. She turned and walked back into the trees, her lantern swinging in a rhythm that echoed the lullaby of the leaves. The traveler stood for a while, letting the moment stretch and settle, then followed the gentle incline of the meadow as it sloped upward once more. The seed they'd been given earlier still pulsed gently, warm against their chest. As they walked, the landscape shifted again. Not sharply, but slowly, like a thought changing course mid-dream. The trees grew sparser until they vanished altogether, and the meadow opened up into a vast field of feathers. They lay in drifts like snow, pale gold and silver and soft as breath. The traveler moved carefully through them, each step muffled and dream-heavy. Overhead, the sky was now filled with drifting islands, small patches of earth and grass, and even tiny houses, floating lazily like clouds. Some held gardens, some swings that moved without being pushed, and some were completely still, as if holding a breath. One of them began to descend toward the traveler, carried by unseen currents. It hovered just above the feathered ground, low enough for the traveler to reach a hanging ladder woven from ribbon and light. Without questioning, they took hold and climbed gently, the ladder folding beneath their weight like silk. The floating island was small, just enough for a tree, a bench, and a pool of perfectly still water. The tree bore glowing fruit that buzzed softly, like lullabies in jars. The bench was curved like a crescent moon, and when the traveler sat down, the island gave a contented sigh. In the pool, reflections shifted without pattern, a face they almost recognized, a bird with too many wings, a hallway full of doors that blinked like eyes. They leaned over the edge and watched as the pool rippled, showing an image that held longer than the others, a house made entirely of wind chimes, nestled in the middle of a soft plain. The traveler closed their eyes, and in the darkness behind their lids, the chime house continued to shimmer, inviting them forward. When they opened their eyes again, the ladder had returned, and the floating island had turned slightly, as if suggesting it was time to move on. They climbed down, slower this time, and the moment their feet touched the feathers below, the island drifted silently away, joining the other quiet shapes in the sky. The meadow welcomed them once more, reshaping gently around their presence, as if guiding them toward something patiently waiting. The stars had shifted again, closer now, and more numerous, twinkling with a rhythm that matched the traveler's breath. The traveler moved forward, though there was no destination, only a continuous unfolding of gentle wonder. The feathers gave way to soft moss once more, and the air became thicker with calm, as though the sky itself had steeped in stillness. A gentle archway appeared ahead, woven from vines that glowed faintly with threads of moonlight. The vines swayed in a wind that did not touch the traveler, as if moved by music playing far away in another part of the dream. They stepped through the arch, and the light dimmed slightly, not darkness, but a kind of tender twilight, like the hush in a room where someone is just about to fall asleep. The world on the other side of the arch was different again, though still entirely quiet, entirely soft. The ground was covered in low, plush grass that glowed with a faint bluish hue. Beneath their feet, the grass emitted faint tones with each step, like walking on scattered chimes. In the center of this twilight meadow stood a tall mirror, rimmed with flowering vines that shifted color as though reacting to thought. The mirror reflected not the traveler, but another version of them, sitting calmly beside a fireplace in a room made of cloud walls and soft books that turned their own pages. The reflected version smiled gently and stood, placing a hand against the inside of the mirror. Without thinking, the traveler raised their own hand to meet it. There was no surface, no glass, only warmth and a feeling like stepping into a memory you didn't know you had. Suddenly the traveler found themselves standing not before the mirror, but within the room itself, surrounded by soft cloud walls, the sound of a fire crackling like distant laughter, and the scent of cedar and vanilla and something unplaceable but comforting. A chair waited beside the fire, cushions plump and low. They sat, and as they did, the walls of the room shifted like curtains, revealing windows into dreams not yet dreamed. Through one window, a whale floated past, trailing long strands of stardust. Through another, a woman danced slowly with the rain, her dress made of petals and fog. In yet another, the travelers saw themselves sleeping peacefully in a room lit by fireflies. The fire beside them burned without heat, its flame flickering in slow motion, casting no shadows, only warmth. The books on the nearby shelves rustled as if breathing, their covers opening just slightly, revealing glowing script that rearranged itself like flowing water. One book slid forward and dropped softly into the traveler's lap. Its cover was blank but warm to the touch. When they opened it, they found not words, but moving images, dreams they had forgotten, moments between moments, falling asleep in a sunbeam as a child, the scent of a favorite blanket, the hush that falls before snow. They turned each page slowly, savoring the stillness between them, until the last page revealed a single word that echoed soundlessly through the room: continue. As they closed the book, the room began to dissolve around them, not with sadness, but with a promise. The fire dimmed to a flicker, the walls turned to mist, and the floor of the room softened until it was once again the floating meadow, waiting like it always had. The traveler stood, the book now gone, but the feeling of it still resting in their chest. The stars above had grown brighter, more numerous, their light gentle and full of silence. The air was cooler now, filled with tiny silver threads that danced lazily like snowflakes with no need to land. A soft path of lanterns now lit the way forward, each one flickering like it had something kind to say. They followed this path, passing more trees with bell-shaped leaves, more hills that breathed in rhythm, and distant shapes that could have been memories or dreams or simply the fabric of the place itself rearranging out of kindness. At the end of the lantern path was a small table made of woven mist, and on it, a teacup sat steaming, though no one was near. The traveler sat in the chair beside it, which molded gently to their shape, as if it had been waiting only for them. They lifted the cup. It was weightless and warm, and drank slowly. The taste was indescribable, like a story never told but always known. As they sipped, the stars above began to drift closer, forming soft constellations that whispered across the sky in waves. The traveler looked up, eyes heavy with peace, and the stars blinked slowly in return. They set the cup down and leaned back in the chair, the meadow wrapping around them like a blanket, the seed near their heart glowing gently once more. The sky pulsed softly above, shifting hues like breath, lavender into rose, rose into blue, blue into that quiet shade only seen between dreams. The traveler closed their eyes for a moment, and when they opened them, they were no longer seated at the mist-woven table, but reclining on a raft of woven petals that floated slowly down a river of light. The water beneath them glowed with soft swirls of golden current, and above, clouds in the shape of seashells drifted silently past. The raft moved without effort, carried by something old and gentle. On either side of the glowing river, tall reeds shimmered with tiny lights at their tips, bending slightly as though bowing. Occasionally, the traveler passed other rafts, each carrying someone curled up peacefully, dreaming deeply, their faces turned toward the stars. Some of the sleepers smiled faintly, while others clutched objects glowing with memory, an old scarf, a closed journal, a single glove made of thread and snow. None spoke. None stirred. The traveler watched them pass, feeling not alone but quietly among, like being part of a lullaby's forgotten verse. As the raft drifted onward, the sky above opened wider, revealing what looked like great floating tapestries made from wind and song. They waved slowly, each stitched with scenes too vast to hold all at once, dancing cities, upside-down forests, rivers made of clocks that ticked without sound. The traveler reached up once, and their fingers brushed a tendril of one such tapestry. The touch sent a soft note through the air, and the river responded with a deeper glow, the current humming in harmony. Soon the raft came to a place where the river widened into a pool, perfectly round, its surface still and glassy. At its center stood a single tree made entirely of silver thread, its branches long and low and swaying with dream fruit that changed shape with every blink. The raft slowed, paused, and gently came to rest beside a tiny landing made of folded time. The traveler stepped off. Their feet touched the surface of the water, but they did not sink. Instead, the pool welcomed them, holding them gently as they walked toward the tree at its heart. Beneath the silver boughs, a soft bench curved around the trunk, cushioned in velvet moss. The traveler sat. The air was filled with the softest hum, like the inside of a shell held to the ear. One of the dream fruit detached from the tree and floated down into the traveler's lap. It shimmered with soft shifting light, growing warm as it touched them. Without opening it, they knew it contained a dream that had been waiting patiently for them, one that could only be visited here, in this moment, in this place between stars. They closed their eyes. The fruit dissolved, and they fell inward, not down, but inward, into a vision wrapped in soft haze. In the dream, they walked barefoot across a shore made of cloud dust and glass petals, the sky overhead raining gently with forget-me-nots and golden feathers. A creature made of glowing strings guided them through archways of laughter, into gardens where memories grew like fruit on vine-laced gates. They wandered for what felt like days, gathering pieces of themselves they didn't know they'd lost. When the dream ended, they awoke still beneath the silver-threaded tree. Nothing had changed, yet everything felt quieter inside. The river behind them began to drift once more, the surface shimmering with scenes yet to come. The traveler stood, feeling no hurry, and the tree whispered a soft farewell in a language made of breeze. They stepped lightly onto another raft, this one smaller, pale blue, made from the pages of books never written. It welcomed them with a sigh and pushed off into the current. As they floated, the river narrowed, and the stars above thickened into a velvet canopy, wrapping the world in stillness. In the far distance, the faint outline of a doorway appeared, not a door, but a doorway, freestanding, made of woven reeds and threads of soft night. The raft carried them toward it without pause. The traveler sat up gently as they approached, feeling the hush deepen. The doorway glowed faintly with promise, not asking, not warning, just offering. The raft stopped beside it. The traveler stepped through. They stepped through the doorway and found themselves standing on a path made of old lullabies, stitched together with threads spun from yawned wishes and half-remembered melodies. The path curled upward into the air without ground beneath it, winding slowly like the curl of smoke in the dusk. Around them was nothing and everything. A vast openness filled with softness, as if the universe itself had wrapped a quilt around its shoulders and whispered a secret to the stars. The traveler walked slowly, each step weightless but sure. Below them, far beneath the path, great wheels turned, not mechanical, but woven from light and time, turning gently in silence. With every turn, they sent out little pulses of glow that shimmered through the air like fireflies. The traveler paused, watching the rhythm, and as they did, one of the pulses rose to meet them. It hovered like a thought just before waking, then unfolded into the shape of a bird with wings made of parchment and ink. It circled once, then perched softly on the traveler's shoulder. The weight of it was barely there, more like a memory of warmth than anything solid. The bird hummed a soft, threadbare tune. And where its feathers touched the traveler's skin, small flecks of gentle blue light settled and sank inward, carrying with them peace. As they continued walking, the path began to dissolve behind them, not with urgency but with the calm certainty of a dream finishing its story. The bird flew ahead, guiding the way as the path curved upward one final time, ending on a platform shaped like a lily pad floating in starlight. On this platform stood a carousel. Slow, still, made of carved dreams and sleep sounds. Each creature upon it was unfamiliar yet comforting, a deer with cloud antlers, a whale with lanterns along its back, a fox curled within a floating teacup. The carousel began to turn without sound, its movement so gentle it felt like a sigh in motion. The traveler stepped up and placed a hand on the nearest creature, a large, sleepy moth with velvet wings. The moment their fingers touched its back, the world softened once more, and the platform beneath them melted into a new space entirely. Now they were in a garden without edges. Flowers hung in the air like stars, drifting in gentle loops. Trees swayed despite the stillness. The grass beneath their feet emitted a low, restful hum, and above, a moon with three faces watched silently, its expression always kind. The traveler walked slowly through the garden, their hands brushing petals that sang in whispers when touched. From behind one of the trees came a sound like gentle bells. They followed it and found a table set for tea, surrounded by chairs filled with sleeping animals, rabbits curled beneath quilts, a deer resting its head on a pillow of leaves, an owl perched on the back of a chair with its eyes half-lidded in a dream. One empty seat waited. The traveler sat. A teacup appeared in their hands, already warm, already perfect. They sipped and closed their eyes, and the tea filled their chest with a slow golden light that trickled through their limbs like syrup through a tree. Around them, the garden seemed to pause in its swaying, as if listening to the traveler breathe. Somewhere far off, a wind chime laughed quietly, and a breeze that smelled of old stories passed through. When they finished their tea, the cup vanished with a shimmer, and the animals stirred only slightly, murmuring in their sleep but never waking. The traveler stood once more, lighter now, as though the garden had drawn away the last of the weight they hadn't known they were carrying. A path of floating stones now stretched out ahead, each one a different shape, some round, some crescent, some shaped like letters from forgotten alphabets. They stepped onto the first, and it rose with them, lifting into the air. The others followed, forming a staircase that led upward through the garden's canopy, past hanging lanterns filled with firefly laughter and vines that braided themselves into spirals of comfort. Higher and higher they rose, until the garden was a soft memory beneath them, and above, a dome of stars opened wide, revealing something larger, older, and even more peaceful. The dome above them unfolded like the slow opening of a book's final chapter, each star a letter, each constellation a lullaby etched into the night. The traveler reached the top of the floating stone staircase and stepped into a space that felt neither outside nor inside but gently both. It was a room without walls, without ceiling, yet held together by warmth and quiet rhythm. The floor was made of mist woven with threads of light that pulsed with every heartbeat. Hanging in the air were orbs the size of lanterns, suspended like thought bubbles. Inside each orb swirled a small moving scene, a fox riding a comet, a girl painting stars across a canyon sky, a sleeping whale cradled by clouds. The traveler moved among them, brushing fingertips across each one, and the orbs responded with soft vibrations, greetings, remembrances, invitations. One orb hovered closer than the rest, its light a soft coral glow, and within it danced a memory that didn't feel like theirs, yet comforted them deeply. A room filled with pillows and slow-moving shadows, where wind whispered lullabies through half-open windows and everything smelled of warm bread and cedarwood. As they watched, the orb gently opened like a blossom, and the memory unfolded around them. The traveler stood within the soft room now, the world wrapped in thick curtains and quiet music. A fire danced without flame in a hearth made of stardust bricks, and soft chairs leaned together in conversation. In one chair sat a version of themselves, not identical, but somehow them nonetheless, older, quieter, smiling with a knowing look. This other self gestured to the empty chair beside them. The traveler sat. No words passed, but something deep and slow was shared in the space between their breathing. Understanding hummed like a tune long forgotten and now remembered. The fire pulsed warmly, filling the silence with layers of comfort. Then the room folded gently away, not collapsing but melting, like fog returning to sky. The traveler stood again in the open dome of orbs. One by one, they dimmed, their memories complete. A new path revealed itself, curving upward once more, this time made of floating leaves. The traveler stepped carefully, though the leaves held their weight as if made for this journey alone. Each leaf glowed faintly beneath their feet, lighting only while touched, then dimming as they moved on. Above, the sky deepened to indigo, then softened again to a color that could only be described as hush. On the horizon, a tower rose. Not grand, but tall and thin, made of wind and woven reeds, its top gently flickering like a candle in the distance. The path of leaves led straight to it. As the traveler approached, they noticed the tower swaying slightly, as though breathing. The door at its base was ajar, made from woven feathers and stitched dreamlines. They entered, and inside found only a spiral stair that seemed to drift upward into a tunnel of soft stars. With no hesitation, they began to climb. The steps made no sound. Around them, the walls shimmered with shifting colors and memories too gentle to fully grasp. Shapes moved through them like ideas still being born, gentle, slow, peaceful. As they climbed higher, the air grew more silent, but not empty, full, instead, of presence. A sense that something kinda waited. When they reached the top, they stepped into a circular room lined with pillows and folded blankets, like a nest prepared just for them. Windows opened out into every direction. Views of meadows, of starlit oceans, of sleeping forests where every tree dreamed slowly. In the center of the room was a low bed made of soft moss and velvet dusk. The traveler sat at its edge, then lay back, and the ceiling above shimmered into a mirror of the sky, stars tracing soft circles above their head. The seat at their chest pulsed once more, bright, slow, final. It dissolved into their heart, not lost but joined. A bell rang once, far away, not loud but complete. And then the tower slowly began to drift upward into the stars, carrying the traveler ever higher, though their body did not move, only their dream. The tower rose without movement, not climbing through space but shifting through layers of stillness. Outside the windows, the stars now floated closer, no longer far-off points of light but great lanterns of memory, each swaying slowly as if in thought. One drifted so near that its glow spilled gently into the room, wrapping the traveler in a warmth that wasn't heat but recognition, like being remembered by something too vast to speak. As they lay in the soft moss bed, a hush descended, not silence, but a deeper kind of quiet, the kind that only lives in the breath before sleep or the space between words in a lullaby. Above, the stars rearranged themselves, forming patterns the traveler instinctively understood. One resembled a hand reaching toward a bird. Another was a circle of clouds with a doorway in its center. The sky was full of gentle symbols, and each one shimmered for a moment before slowly returning to the great dance above. Somewhere in the room, soft music began to drift, notes made of wind, of turning pages, of dreams exhaled into the night. It came from nowhere and everywhere, a rhythm that didn't press forward but gently held everything in place. The traveler let their eyes close, though they did not sleep. Instead, they floated within their own stillness, their breath a slow tide. Images passed beneath their eyelids, soft fields with moons growing on stems, rivers where boats moved backward into memories, a staircase made of cushions that led only inward. They felt no urge to grasp any of it, only to observe, to rest in the flow. The bed beneath them shifted slightly, not to disturb, but to cradle, adjusting like a mother tucking in a child already asleep. The tower continued its drifting, rising now through the final veil of sky where thoughts become stars and stars become breath. Outside the windows, a gathering of clouds began to glow from within. They were shaped like animals, like people, like places the traveler had never visited but somehow knew. A fox made of smoke napped within a spiral, its tail curling around a mountain of feathers. A train of lanterns passed silently through a canyon of moonlight, each window holding a sleeping face. A tree taller than sky itself bent slowly to drink from a pool of reflected night. And then, just as gently as they had appeared, the visions passed, like dreams slipping back into the folds from which they came. The traveler opened their eyes. The room had changed again, not in shape, but in feeling. It was now softer, deeper, lit by a single floating glow that pulsed with a color that had no name. On the far wall, a curtain of woven threads parted slowly, revealing a doorway of velvet shadow. The traveler stood, rested and weightless, and stepped through. On the other side, they found themselves not in another place, but in a version of the meadow they had left behind. The stars still swayed above, the grass still shimmered with memory, but everything now breathed with them, as if the entire dream had joined their heartbeat. The seed they had carried was no longer separate, it had become part of the field, the stars, the wind, the breath in their chest. They walked again through the meadow, and wherever they stepped, flowers opened in soft delight. Trees bowed gently in greeting. The brook of stars hummed their name, not as a sound, but as a warm vibration of belonging. Creatures of light floated past, some pausing to watch, others joining in quiet procession. It was not a parade, nor a celebration, but a recognition, a returning. They were not the same traveler who had wandered through this place before. They had become something wider, softer, more whole. Ahead, the hill that had once risen unexpectedly now glowed with soft golden light. The traveler climbed it again, slower this time, not out of weariness, but reverence. Each step deepened the hush. At the top of the hill, they turned and looked back across the meadow that floated between stars. It stretched out forever, not as a distance, but as a feeling, home, rest, peace. They sat there, letting the wind pass through them like a lullaby, letting the stars blink slowly overhead. The night was full now, full in a way that meant nothing was missing. They lay back in the soft grass, which welcomed them like an old friend, and stared upward into the vast, endless hush of sky. As the traveler lay in the grass at the hill's crest, the sky above seemed to tilt slightly, just enough to let more starlight spill down into the meadow. It wasn't bright, just full, gentle waves of silver light rolling softly across the land, illuminating every blade of grass, every leaf and petal, with a glow like remembered lullabies. A faint rustle drifted through the air, not from the wind, but from the stars themselves, as if they were turning pages. The traveler felt something beneath them shift, slow and patient. The hill hummed like a drum played with a feather, and then, without warning, it rose. Not sharply, not with force. It lifted like a sigh, becoming a gentle creature of earth and peace, carrying the traveler upward, its shape unfurling into something wide and watchful. The hill was alive, not in the way trees or people are, but in the way clouds remember where they've been. As it moved, flowers opened in its wake, and the air filled with drifting seeds shaped like music notes and moons. The traveler sat up, not startled, simply curious, and the hill creature tilted just enough for them to see further than before. On the horizon now glowed something new, a structure of woven air and light, gently spinning in place like a slow-turning thought. It looked like a windmill but taller, its blades made of sheer dreams, catching not wind but emotion, turning them into slow-motion echoes that drifted into the sky. The hill creature carried the traveler closer, and with each slow step, the windmill grew clearer. It had no doors, no walls, just layers of gauze and intention wrapped around a center that shimmered with stillness. When they arrived, the hill knelt softly, letting the traveler step off onto a field of moss that pulsed like a heartbeat in rest. The windmill sang. Not a song with words or notes, but one of pauses and hushes and breath between thoughts. The traveler approached the structure, and as they did, a gentle spiral of light unfolded from its center, reaching out like an arm to welcome them. The spiral wrapped around their wrist and led them inward. Inside the windmill, time paused. Not stopped, just paused, like a breath drawn in before sleep. Within the shifting folds of dream thread, the travelers saw glimpses of their own journey, the silver tree, the garden of lanterns, the floating island, the mirrored room. But each was changed slightly, softened, made rounder by memory. In the center of the windmill stood a single, hovering shape, a cradle of starlight. It rocked slowly, though nothing lay within it. The traveler approached, and as they did, they understood it was not empty. It held something invisible, something just about to become. An idea still dreaming of itself. A beginning wrapped in hush. Without speaking, they knelt beside it, placing one hand gently on its edge. The cradle warmed, and a small spark of light rose from it, dancing upward into the tower of the windmill, joining the soft swirl above. The windmill pulsed once in gratitude. Then, as if by shared knowing, the folds of dream thread began to open again, revealing a doorway that hadn't been there before. The traveler rose and stepped through. They found themselves back in the meadow, but not where they had been. This place felt deeper, like a chapter written in softer ink. The stars were closer here, touching the tops of grasses, resting on tree branches like drowsy birds. A mist rolled slowly across the land, wrapping around the traveler's ankles, warm and sweet as steam from a favorite cup. In the distance, a low hum began to rise. Not threatening, just presence. It sounded like a mountain remembering the wind. The traveler followed the sound, and soon they reached a small grove of trees that bowed as they entered. The grove was shaped like a circle, and at its center was a pool, not of water, but of shadowless reflection. It mirrored not the world, but the heart. When the traveler gazed into it, they saw a version of themselves not as they were or had been, but as they felt, soft, wide, curious, and deeply, endlessly calm. They sat beside the pool, watching the reflection shift not with movement, but with breath, and in that quiet they found themselves relaxing even further, as if the meadow itself were singing them into a deeper layer of rest. The traveler remained by the pool for a time that felt like both a moment and forever, the calm reflection blending with their own breath. Slowly, the surface of the pool shimmered and changed, revealing not just themselves but the meadow stretching endlessly beneath a sky full of gentle stars. The reflection deepened, folding the traveler's image into the landscape until they were both one and many, a single thread woven into the vast fabric of dream. As the pool's light softened, a small ripple disturbed its surface, and from the center rose a delicate figure made of mist and starlight. It moved gracefully, flowing like a slow melody carried on the night air. The figure reached out, and the traveler instinctively took its hand, feeling a wave of warmth pulse through them like a lullaby's embrace. Together they rose from the grove, the misty figure guiding them through winding paths lined with glowing flowers that bloomed only in the quietest moments. As they walked, the stars overhead flickered in soft conversation, their light carrying stories without words. The paths led to a vast field of tall grass that shimmered silver and blue, each blade glowing faintly like a candle in the dark. In the distance, shapes of gentle hills rolled slowly, breathing with the rhythm of the stars. The misty figure paused at the edge of the field and turned to the traveler with eyes like pools of night. Without speaking, it conveyed a feeling of peace and belonging deeper than words could reach. The traveler nodded, feeling the message settle inside like a soft song. They stepped into the field together, the grass brushing against their legs like whispered secrets. The stars above twirled slowly, casting gentle shadows that danced in harmony with the swaying blades. As they moved deeper, the field began to rise beneath their feet, carrying them upward like a gentle elevator made of light and air. They rose above the meadow, floating through layers of soft clouds tinted with hues of lavender and rose. The misty figure held their hand firmly but gently, anchoring them in the dream as the world unfolded beneath. From this height, the traveler could see the entire meadow spread out like a sleeping giant, its hills breathing softly, its rivers of stars winding endlessly. The sky around them rippled like water, shifting in colors too soft and strange to name, like a memory just out of reach. After a time, the misty figure guided the traveler toward a vast tree that stretched from earth to sky, its branches woven with strands of silver and gold. The tree's leaves shimmered with quiet light, and its bark glowed faintly as though lit from within by gentle fires. At the base of the tree was a doorway carved from moonlight and shadow, inviting yet unassuming. The traveler stepped through, following the misty guide into the tree's heart. Inside, the air smelled of rain and earth and old stories, wrapped in the warmth of countless dreams. The interior was larger than expected, filled with soft light filtering through leaves that glowed like stars. Here, the traveler found a chair crafted from woven branches, cushioned with moss and feathers. They sat, feeling the tree's slow heartbeat beneath them, steady and calm. The misty figure settled beside them, and together they listened to the silence, which hummed with life. Outside, the meadow continued its slow dance beneath the stars, but inside the tree, time folded into itself, a gentle loop of rest and renewal. The traveler closed their eyes, sinking deeper into the embrace of the dream, knowing they were safe, held by the meadow that floated between stars. The traveler remained seated within the tree's heart, wrapped in the warmth of moss and the steady pulse of the branches. Outside, the meadow whispered softly. A quiet song of old rain, soft grass, and stars waking slowly. The misty figure beside them shifted slightly, becoming more translucent, more like the breeze that carries dreams across sleeping fields. The traveler closed their eyes and felt themselves drift deeper, not falling but floating, suspended in a space where time folded and stretched like a ribbon of light. Images came and went behind their eyelids. An endless garden where flowers bloomed with the sound of laughter, a lake that mirrored the sky and held secrets of forgotten summers, a staircase woven from cloud and moonbeams leading nowhere and everywhere at once. When they opened their eyes again, the tree had transformed, its branches now a canopy of gentle lights that moved like slow fireflies. A path of glowing petals unfolded before them, leading out into the meadow once more. The traveler stood and followed it, each step sending ripples of calm through the air. As they moved, the meadow shifted again, the soft hills folding away to reveal a wide plain where the grass shimmered like spun silver under a sky scattered with slow-falling stars. Here, the traveler noticed a small fire burning without smoke or heat, surrounded by stones carved from dream glass. Sitting by the fire was a figure woven from twilight and whispers. A guardian of this place, perhaps, or a dream itself given form. The figure beckoned silently, and the traveler approached. Words were not needed. The presence alone spoke of safety, rest, and the deep stillness that lies between breaths. The traveler sat by the fire, feeling the gentle warmth seep into their bones like a song sung beneath the quiet of night. Around them, the meadow hummed softly, and the stars above twinkled in slow rhythm, as if dancing to a lullaby only they could hear. After some time, the fire's glow faded into a soft shimmer, and the guardian figure slowly dissolved into the night air, leaving behind a single glowing feather that floated into the traveler's hand. They held it gently, feeling its lightness and warmth, a reminder that even in silence there is presence, and in stillness, a quiet song. The meadow began to fold around them once more, a gentle embrace guiding them toward rest. The traveler lay down on the soft grass, the glowing feather resting lightly on their chest, and as they closed their eyes, the stars above blinked slowly in welcome. The dream deepened, the meadow floated, and the traveler finally surrendered to the gentle hush between waking and sleep. The traveler's breathing slowed further, each inhale and exhale a soft ripple through the quiet meadow. As they lay beneath the endless sky, the grass beneath them pulsed gently, a heartbeat shared between earth and dream. The glowing feather on their chest shimmered with a light that was neither bright nor dim but perfectly balanced, like the moment just before a sigh escapes. Above, the stars shifted again, arranging themselves into new constellations, shapes that whispered of journeys yet to come and places where rest was endless. The air carried a scent faint and familiar, like rain on warm stone, or the pages of a book left open to a favorite passage. From the edge of the meadow, a soft breeze rose, carrying with it a melody made of memory and hope. It wove through the grass, lifting the traveler's hair and wrapping around them like a blanket of sound. Far off, the outline of a gentle river appeared, flowing not with water, but with liquid light that rippled softly with every star it passed. The traveler rose, feeling weightless and free, and moved toward the riverbank. As they approached, the light rippled and parted, revealing stepping stones made of moonlight, each glowing softly beneath their feet. They stepped onto the stones, crossing the river in slow, deliberate steps. On the far side, a field of soft flowers stretched wide, petals shimmering with dew made of dream dust. The flowers bent gently in greeting as the traveler passed, their colors shifting with every breath of wind. In the center of the field stood a great tree, its trunk wide and warm, its branches stretching out like arms ready to hold the world. The traveler walked beneath the canopy, feeling the cool shade and the gentle hum of life within the leaves. Small creatures made of light and shadow flitted among the branches, singing quiet songs without words. At the base of the tree, a door of woven moonbeams waited, glowing softly. The traveler reached out and touched the door, which opened silently to reveal a room filled with soft light and gentle warmth. Inside, a bed of cloud-soft pillows waited, arranged with care. The traveler lay down once more, sinking into the softness as the room filled with the sound of distant lullabies. Outside, the meadow stretched on, endless and serene, cradled beneath the watchful stars. The traveler felt themselves drifting deeper into sleep, carried by the meadow's gentle breath, the stars' slow dance, and the unending hush of dreams. The traveler sank deeper into the bed of soft clouds, the weight of their body dissolving until even the idea of form faded into a gentle haze. Around them, the room glowed with a light that pulsed slowly like the rhythm of a peaceful heart, and the distant lullabies became softer, like echoes of dreams remembered by the stars themselves. Time here did not pass in any ordinary way. Minutes stretched and curled into hours, and hours folded gently back into moments. The traveler floated through these currents like a leaf on a moonlit stream. As sleep enveloped them fully, their thoughts became shapes, soft, drifting images of lanterns glowing above still lakes, of wind playing chimes in a distant orchard, of golden bridges leading across skies of velvet. The misty figure returned, appearing not as a form this time, but as a warmth in the air, a shimmer on the edge of thought. It whispered without sound, reminding the traveler they were safe, that the meadow was watching, dreaming with them, breathing with them. Outside the tree, the flowers continued to sway in rhythm with unseen music. In the far distance, the stars began to gently fall, not in bursts or streaks but like feathers, floating downward with no urgency. Each one that touched the meadow became a glowing bud, blooming slowly into a new flower, joining the landscape in its quiet evolution. The traveler stirred slightly, not waking, but drifting upward into a new layer of the dream. The tree opened its branches wider, lifting them into a space where the sky became fluid, like water reflecting thoughts. Here, islands of light drifted past, soft meadows, moonlit cottages, staircases that led to balconies in the sky. The traveler stepped from one to another as though walking through old memories they had never lived but always known. On one island, a carousel spun slowly with no music, its painted horses glowing with starlight. On another, an endless library opened beneath a translucent dome, filled with books that hummed as they dreamed of being read. The traveler smiled, not with lips but with presence, feeling a stillness that echoed through every step. Eventually, a spiral path appeared beneath their feet, leading upward into a cloud shaped like a cradle. The path was soft, like walking through fog, and with each step, the traveler's breath grew slower, deeper, calmer. They reached the top and stepped into the cradle cloud, which rocked gently, held aloft by the breath of the sky. Above, constellations shifted into gentle animals, foxes curled into moons, whales swimming through stars, birds gliding without wing beats. Below, the meadow shimmered on, a glowing dream stretched wide, endless, eternal, and full of rest. The traveler closed their eyes once more, arms folded gently, as the cradle swayed to the lullaby of the stars, held softly in the dream of the meadow. The cradle of cloud swayed slowly, rocked by the soft rhythm of the sky's breath. The traveler lay within it, half asleep in the embrace of something far older than time, far gentler than memory. All around them, the heavens shimmered like quiet water touched by starlight, and below, the meadow stretched on forever, a living quilt stitched with flowers that glowed and grasses that sang in silence. In this space, thought moved slowly, like a petal drifting in a pond. The traveler felt the presence of others, not seen, not heard, but felt, like echoes of dreams passing through the same sky. Shapes moved through the distance. Glowing silhouettes of wanderers, dreamers, perhaps parts of themselves left behind in other dreams. One by one, these shapes passed through the air like paper lanterns, and as each one neared, the traveler felt a story drift by, memories of warm summer evenings, of rain tapping softly on glass, of walking barefoot through tall grass while fireflies lit the path. The cradle began to lower, slowly descending back toward the meadow, trailing soft light like a falling star. The grasses parted in welcome, revealing a quiet glade where trees bent into arcs and ponds reflected moons that did not hang in the sky. The traveler stepped out onto the earth once more, barefoot, feeling each blade of grass as if it were a note in a song sung just for them. A gentle stream wound its way through the glade, its waters filled not with fish but with drifting bits of light that blinked slowly, like sleeping eyes. The traveler knelt by the stream and dipped their hand in, feeling not water, but memory, cool, soft, and full of warmth. Visions danced across the surface, a door opening into sunlight, a cup of tea held in silence, the rustle of pages turned by wind alone. As the traveler stood, the meadow responded, blooming anew in ripples that moved outward like a smile. A path formed underfoot, lined with soft stones and flowers that turned their faces upward. The traveler followed it, feeling no urgency, only the comfort of being exactly where they were meant to be. The path led to a hill where a small cottage rested, built from pieces of the dream itself, walls of woven dusk, windows of still water, a roof made from the soft curve of a crescent moon. Smoke rose gently from the chimney, curling into clouds shaped like lullabies. The door opened before the traveler touched it, revealing a room lit by candlelight that did not flicker. Shelves held books whose titles changed each time they were read, and a kettle hummed quietly on the hearth, waiting patiently. The traveler stepped inside and sat beside the fire, not to speak, not to think, but simply to be. Outside, the meadow whispered through the windows, carrying the hush of leaves and the echo of dreams folded into stars. The fire within the cottage crackled with a sound that was not quite flame, more like a memory of warmth, soft and distant, like a song remembered from long ago. The traveler sat beside it, their eyes half closed, listening to the silence between the sounds. The kettle released a breath of steam that curled like a silver ribbon into the rafters, carrying with it a scent both familiar and impossible to name. It smelled like the pause before sunrise, like pages pressed together in an old journal, like stars tucked into the folds of a blanket. A cup appeared before the traveler, its handle curved like a crescent, its surface shimmering with reflections of skies unseen. They lifted it slowly and sipped, finding the warmth inside matched the quiet rhythm of their own heartbeat. The taste was not of herbs or sugar or spice, but of peace itself, liquid calm, distilled stillness. Around them, the walls of the cottage gently shifted. Not in any alarming way, but as if the cottage were breathing with the world, expanding and softening with each passing moment. The shelves now held tiny glowing jars that blinked like eyes in sleep, each containing a single perfect thought. One glowed with the memory of laughter beside a lake. Another pulsed softly with the image of clouds drifting over a golden field. Outside the windows, the meadow pulsed faintly with light, like it too had curled up for a nap beneath the sky. The traveler stood and moved toward the door, their cup vanishing as gently as it had appeared. Outside, the path had grown softer still, blanketed now with petals that fell continuously from an unseen tree above. The air was hushed, not silent but full of the kind of stillness that cradles rather than empties. As the traveler walked, the petals whispered beneath their feet, tiny sounds like the brushing of fingertips across linen. The sky above had deepened into a soft indigo, and stars began to draw slow lines across the firmament, not shooting, but meandering, as if in no hurry to reach wherever it was they might be going. Ahead, a bridge arched gently over a ravine filled with mist. The bridge was made of glassy stone, its surface cool and luminous, and as the traveler stepped onto it, the mist below began to part. Within the mist were drifting shapes, old toys, handwritten letters, the corners of songs half sung. Each fragment floated by like a dream forgotten on waking, not lost, but simply resting in the space between. The traveler paused in the center of the bridge and leaned on the railing, watching as the mist glowed with the warmth of gentle things. For a moment, they closed their eyes and let themselves drift inward, where thoughts no longer formed into words, but into waves, soft and slow, like rain over velvet. The stars above whispered down, a lullaby made of gravity and grace. The traveler opened their eyes as the bridge beneath them sighed gently, as though it too had been resting. A breeze rose from the mist, carrying with it the faint scent of something sweet and earthy. Perhaps the memory of warm bread, or the distant trace of lavender crushed between fingertips. The traveler stepped off the bridge and followed the path once more, which now wound slowly through a forest where the trees had no edges. Their trunks glowed with soft light, and their leaves floated just above the branches, as if suspended in a slow exhale. Light filtered down in soft beams that moved like ripples in a pond, and every now and then a feather or a blossom would drift down and settle without a sound. As they walked, the traveler came upon a clearing where pools of water floated gently in the air, unmoving, like bubbles that had forgotten how to rise. Each one held a miniature landscape, tiny fields, miniature suns setting over oceans the size of acorns, entire skies condensed into marbles of glimmering light. The traveler reached out and touched one, and for a moment, they were there within it, walking through a golden orchard beneath a lavender sky, barefoot on dew-kissed moss, greeted by silent creatures made of petals and starlight. When they returned to the clearing, the floating pool remained unchanged, though it shimmered more brightly, as if grateful to have shared itself. The traveler smiled, and the trees around them responded with a quiet hush of wind, like a sigh of contentment. Continuing on, they came upon a gate made of woven reeds and gentle shadows. It stood alone, not connected to any fence, and swung open with the sound of a breath. Beyond it was a path lined with lanterns shaped like teardrops, each one glowing a different hue, soft pinks, blues, greens, and golds that pulsed gently in a pattern too slow to measure. The traveler passed through them, and with each step, a different memory touched their heart, not their own, perhaps, but echoes offered kindly. A child's laughter echoed faintly. The warmth of a hand in winter. The hush of snowfall just before dawn. The air here grew thicker with calm, like the pause between thoughts, and soon the traveler arrived at a wide circle of grass where the stars touched the ground. They were not hot or bright, but cool and luminous, humming with a peace that resonated in the chest. The traveler sat among them, cross-legged, and felt the starlight enter their breath, filling their lungs with a kind of silence that sang inwards. Around the circle, ghost-like shapes danced slowly, animals made of mist, birds with wings of wind, deer with eyes like moons. None of them spoke or stared, they simply moved in rhythm with the song of the meadow, a song that had no beginning, no melody, only presence. The traveler closed their eyes and let the stillness move through them like a tide, gentle and endless. When the traveler opened their eyes again, the circle of stars had melted back into the grass, leaving behind only a quiet warmth that lingered in the chest like a softly glowing ember. The mist creatures had vanished into the folds of the meadow, their gentle footsteps leaving behind no trace, only the memory of being seen without judgment. The traveler stood, and the wind seemed to cradle them as they moved, slow and steady, as though wrapped in the lullaby of the world. The path ahead shimmered with a faint silver light, guiding the traveler toward a grove of willow trees whose branches flowed upward instead of down, swaying gently in a breeze that didn't seem to come from anywhere at all. Beneath the willows, there were swings made of woven clouds and hammocks spun from moonlight. The traveler climbed into one of the hammocks and lay back, swaying slightly, suspended between the softness of air and the hush of starlit branches. The sky above them curved like a bowl of velvet, scattered with constellations that blinked in and out like fireflies, drawing shapes that shifted before the mind could name them. As they rested, the air began to hum with a distant sound, not music, exactly, but the suggestion of it. A harmony that existed just beyond the reach of hearing, made of feelings and fragments and the sound of stars breathing. The hammock rocked them gently, and with each sway, their thoughts drifted further into the soft unknown. They remembered a room filled with soft pillows and warm blankets, a quiet hand brushing their hair, the muffled laughter of someone long forgotten. These weren't memories from this life, or perhaps from any life, but they held the weight of something true. When the traveler finally rose, the willows whispered a goodbye without words, and the path once more unfolded before them, now lined with tiny glowing stones that flickered as they passed. The land began to slope downward, and soon they came upon a valley filled with soft fog. The fog was cool and gentle, rising only to the knees, and it carried the scent of open books and wildflowers, as if knowledge and nature had curled into one another and fallen asleep. In the heart of the valley stood a great orb, translucent and pulsing softly, like the beating heart of the dream itself. Around it drifted small lights, circling slowly, moving as if caught in a slow, steady dance. The traveler stepped closer, and as they did, the orb responded, sending out ripples of light that brushed across their skin like whispers. Within it, shapes formed, flickers of moments, feelings, words never spoken but understood. The traveler placed a hand on its surface, and the orb filled with color, with warmth, with memories and hopes and tiny pieces of dreams gathered from the sky above. It accepted them, gently and without question, and in return, offered peace, not as a gift, but as a reminder. That peace had always been there. That the dream had always known their name. The orb pulsed once more, and then slowly dimmed, folding its light inward like a flower closing at dusk. The valley, still wrapped in its gentle fog, seemed to sigh with contentment, and the traveler felt the quiet settle into their bones like warmth after a bath. They turned, following a path that had not been there before, a soft, winding ribbon of moss that glowed faintly beneath their steps. The way curved upward now, climbing gently toward the horizon where the stars leaned low, close enough to almost touch. Trees lined the sides of the path, but they were not like any trees the traveler had seen before. Their trunks were translucent and humming with soft golden light, and their leaves sang as the wind moved through them, a chorus of voices, layered and slow, speaking in the tones of forgotten lullabies. At the top of the hill, the path opened into a field of floating stones. Each one hovered just above the ground, gently shifting as though carried by invisible tides. The traveler stepped carefully onto the nearest, and it held them easily, cradling their weight with a softness that defied reason. One by one, they stepped across the floating stones, drifting from one to the next like walking through a sky made solid. With each step, the colors of the world shifted subtly, hues deepening and softening, rose golds melting into silver blues, pale lavenders blooming into rich midnight. Somewhere far below, a soft ringing echoed, like a bell being rung underwater. It was not a warning, but an invitation. At the center of the field, a circle of tall stones stood, each etched with swirling patterns that moved when looked at directly. The traveler entered the circle, and the air changed. Time slowed. the wind stilled. Even the stars seemed to pause in their motion. In the center, a single stone table stood, smooth and round, with a single glowing feather resting atop it. The traveler reached out and touched the feather, and the entire circle responded with a low, thrumming tone that vibrated in the bones, not unpleasant but deeply grounding. Images passed through their mind, not as visions, but as understandings. A bird flying over an ocean with no end. A child sleeping beneath a sky of swirling colors. A door opening not to a room, but to a memory. The feather lifted from the table and floated upward, spinning slowly, dissolving into light. The traveler exhaled, not realizing they had been holding their breath, and the stones around them pulsed in silent reply. As they stepped out of the circle, the field of floating stones gently lowered them back to the earth, and the mossy path reappeared beneath their feet, winding gently down into the next part of the dream. The descent felt slower than the climb, as though time itself was stretching gently to let each moment linger. The traveler followed the moss-lined path as it curved down into a forest where the trees were tall and hollow, and their trunks rang with soft tones whenever the breeze passed through. Each step stirred the air just enough to set off tiny musical notes, some deep like a cello, others high and thin like the sound of glass. The traveler walked in rhythm with the song, and it welcomed them deeper into the hush. Birds with feathers made of ink and silver drifted overhead, their wings moving so slowly it was impossible to tell if they were flying or simply suspended in thought. One of them landed ahead on the path and watched the traveler with eyes like polished mirrors. Then, as if satisfied, it let out a soft trill and flew off again, leaving behind a feather that shimmered like sunlight on water. The traveler picked it up and tucked it behind their ear, where it hummed faintly, a comforting vibration that resonated with the pulse in their temple. Beyond the forest, the path split into three. One led toward a lake that glowed with bioluminescence and reflected stars that didn't exist in the sky above. One led into a field of tall grasses that whispered secrets in a language only the heart could understand. The last disappeared into a tunnel of woven vines and paper lanterns that drifted slowly in the still air. The traveler stood a moment, then turned toward the field, drawn by the hush of its whispers. The grasses brushed their arms and legs gently, as if remembering them, and each step seemed to release a soft sigh from the earth. Shapes moved just beyond the edges of sight, figures of light, of cloud, of scent and memory, never fully seen but never frightening. The traveler felt no fear here, only a deeper curiosity, like that of a dreamer within a dream. A gentle hill rose ahead, and as the traveler reached the top, they saw that the field stretched on forever, dotted with slow-moving orbs of light that floated just above the ground. Each orb contained something different, a sleeping animal, a blooming flower, a single word in an unknown language, a breath caught forever in mid-laugh. The traveler sat among them, and one orb drifted closer. Inside, a tiny version of the traveler sat beneath a tree, sketching a dream onto parchment with a pen made of stardust. The traveler smiled, and the orb pulsed gently, then floated upward, joining the others in their endless waltz. The grasses swayed with a breeze that didn't move, and the sky darkened just enough to deepen the colors, not to bring night but to invite reflection. The traveler lay back, surrounded by light, lulled by the quiet rustle of dreams moving through the meadow like water through roots. As the traveler lay in the grasses, the world gently shifted again. The sky above them became a canvas painted with soft motion, whales made of light swimming through deep indigo, comets trailing ribbons of laughter, and clouds forming familiar faces that smiled before melting back into mist. The orbs drifted higher, dissolving into the sky one by one, leaving behind a faint shimmer that rained down in a fine dust, tickling the traveler's skin like warm snowfall. When they rose again, the field seemed to exhale, and the path opened forward, not as a road, but as a gentle stream of light flowing between the stems. Each step felt lighter than the last, as if gravity were loosening its hold in preparation for something quieter. The stream led into a glade where time no longer seemed to pass in any one direction. Petals fell upward. Shadows paused mid-motion. A tree in the center pulsed with light from within, its branches stretching like arms in slow, eternal dance. Beneath it sat a small wooden boat, resting on a patch of velvet moss, as if waiting patiently for a rider who had always been meant to find it. The traveler stepped into the boat, and without paddles or wind, it began to drift. Rising, not on water, but on air that moved like a current. The glade fell away, replaced by sky, stars, and soft sound. The boat glided along invisible streams, rising through clouds that sang lullabies and shimmered with the memories of laughter and kindness. Occasionally, other boats passed by, each carrying a traveler of their own, some asleep, some gazing outward, some curled with loved ones beside them. No words were spoken, but every passing brought a sense of recognition, of shared purpose, of being part of the same gentle unfolding. The traveler let their hand trail in the space beside the boat, and the air felt like silk, like river water, like music. Shapes began to appear in the distance, floating islands of glowing trees, giant clock faces turning backward, staircases that rose into the dark only to spiral down again somewhere new. The boat passed them all, moving without effort, and the traveler felt the soft drumbeat of their hearts sync with the rhythm of the world. Eventually, the sky lightened, not as dawn breaks, but like a soft lantern being uncovered. The stars grew fewer, but closer. They hung from threads of thought and memory, each one humming faintly in its own frequency. The boat slowed and came to rest beside a floating meadow, a twin of the one they had begun in, yet changed. It welcomed them. The traveler stepped out, and the boat drifted away, empty but not lost, returning perhaps to wait for another. In this meadow, the grass glowed with a warmer hue, and the sky above held no moons or suns, only gentle, turning spirals of color. The traveler knew this was a place of return, not an end, but a circle. A pause in the breath of dreams. The traveler stood still for a long time in the returning meadow, letting the air settle around them like a shawl pulled over the shoulders. There was a sense of completion here, but it wasn't final, it was round, soft-edged, like the feeling of coming home after a long journey and knowing you'll leave again, but not yet. Flowers unfurled in slow motion at their feet, blooming in response to unspoken thoughts, petals opening to reveal tiny scenes inside. An old friend waving across a lake, a quiet snowfall over lantern-lit streets, a dream once half-remembered now playing clearly. The grass beneath their toes felt warmer than before, as though it too recognized the traveler and welcomed them back. In the center of the meadow stood a mirror, not of silver or glass, but of still air and gentle memory. It did not reflect the traveler's face but their journey, the moments of floating, of music, of laughter in quiet places. As they stepped closer, the mirror rippled and faded, revealing a doorway made of woven starlight and soft breath. Without hesitation, the traveler stepped through. On the other side was a room without walls, without floor or ceiling, but it felt like a room nonetheless. Here, everything drifted: chairs made of folded moonlight, a table that held bowls of color, shelves of unopened dreams in jars. A figure stood nearby. Not a person, not quite, but a presence formed of cloud and warmth and memory. It did not speak, but the traveler understood. The journey had been theirs, but it belonged to the meadow too, to the stars, to every whispered name and every feathered thought. The figure raised one hand, and from it flowed a soft stream of light that circled the traveler, winding gently around their form like a ribbon of meaning. It wrapped once, twice, then soaked into them completely. A gift, and a farewell. The traveler turned to find that the meadow was waiting once more, only this time it floated not between stars, but within them. The sky above was no longer far away, it was here, brushing their cheeks, winding between strands of hair, glowing in their breath. They lay down in the grass, arms open to the air, and closed their eyes. Not to sleep, but to drift deeper. Around them, stars slowed to watch. The trees breathed in rhythm with the quiet. Somewhere far off, a bell rang once, and then again, softer. The traveler smiled. There was nothing more to do. The dream held them gently, endlessly, as the meadow floated on, and on, and on. The traveler's breathing settled into the rhythm of the meadow's pulse, rising and falling like the swell of a quiet sea. No time passed here, or perhaps all time passed at once, it didn't matter. Their body felt as light as the petals floating overhead, as grounded as the soil cradling their back. Around them, the stars began to hum, a low, sweet resonance that was neither music nor voice but something older, something felt in the bones of the soul. The meadow responded, its flowers glowing more deeply, the air thickening with the scent of memories not yet made. In this place beyond sleep, beyond dream, the traveler began to forget their name, not from loss, but from peace. The name no longer mattered. What remained was the feeling of having been, of having wandered, of having witnessed beauty in its most quiet forms. The sky above unfolded slowly, revealing shapes that couldn't be described, colors that didn't exist, thoughts made visible. The stars swirled into soft spirals, forming vast patterns that shifted with the traveler's breath. Each inhale brought a memory. Each exhale, a release. Then, from far below or far within, a new sound arrived. It was not a disruption but a return. A reminder that even dreams must sometimes fold back into waking. The meadow didn't vanish. It faded gently, like a song you can still hum long after it ends. The stars did not disappear. They softened, tucking themselves back into the folds of the sky. And the traveler opened their eyes. They were not where they had been, yet something from the dream remained. Perhaps it was the hum of stillness in the early morning air. Perhaps it was the scent of stargrass on the wind. Or perhaps it was the feather tucked gently behind their ear. They sat up slowly, not startled, not rushed. The world was quieter now. Softer. The kind of quiet that lives just after a story ends, when the echoes still linger and the heart is full. They stood and stretched, and though the ground beneath their feet was familiar, a part of them still floated. Not apart from the world, but within it, more gently now. The traveler looked up at the sky and smiled. Somewhere, the meadow still floated between stars. And somewhere inside, they still walked its soft, endless paths.